been a while since I've been able to make a video and post it on YouTube on this channel. I've gone through another series of health challenges. Of course, I've already been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. So that means I suffer from a lot of fatigue that lingers day after day, year after year. So I have to pace myself, learning to pace. Also, fibromyalgia means that I have excessive nerve pain, and especially on wet and cool days, which is not easy here in Vancouver. But also on the Pacific Northwest, it's just generally cold and damp, especially in the winters. But of course, it can kind of flare up anytime, and it can flare up with too much activity or certain things I eat. But last October, since probably my last post, I had a series of new chronic issues come up. And what happened was I was playing soccer with my son in the basement, and he stiffed the ball with his feet, and I kicked it and it kind of stubbed my toe, and there was an instant pain, but then it kind of subsided. But the next day, on Canadian Thanksgiving, I noticed that there was increasing pain in my toe. So that Monday evening after our Thanksgiving dinner, I noticed a huge amount of pain, and in the night it was waking me up and I couldn't sleep. I thought maybe I had broken my toe, but yeah, the next morning I couldn't even put any pressure on that foot at all. The pain was so immense, and so I just kind of took Tylenol, tried to bear with it, thought, maybe it's just basically sprained or something like that. And also I just didn't feel like I had the energy because of my lack of sleep to even go to an ER or some sort of emergency center. And so it wasn't until Thursday when I went into a local center and saw a doctor after much waiting, but it took so much effort to get there on crutches. She sent me to XRAYs down the street. It was about 2 blocks away, and it took so much energy just to get there and back again. It was exhausting. It was just, when you're struggling with fatigue, chronic fatigue, going to the hospital is just that much more challenging. And the pain of the fibromyalgia seemed to just magnify this toe issue. The doctor didn't see any breakages in the x-rays and assumed it was just a bruised toe. But I messaged my brother, who's a doctor in a different province, and he was wondering if I might have something related to uric acid buildup in the body. And yeah, so I basically put that in the back of my mind, thinking it might be, but kind of went with the doctor's diagnosis here. But then throughout the week, about a week later, my other toe started hurting, and not only that, but my left calf as well. And that's where I went into the same clinic again and had a different doctor this time, and he definitely had concern as there was discoloration in my left leg, and I was just very cold. I could not keep myself warm. It was a cooler October day and quite rainy, so it's very hard. I couldn't wear shoes at this point because my feet were swollen, and yeah, basically was just very uncomfortable. He sent me to ER, and so I went to Mount St. Joseph's ER, and there they were able to, see me quite quickly. They put me in a bed, and thankfully there was room there, and they immediately did some blood tests on me and found out that there was high uric acid levels in my body, as well as blood clot. And so that was a real shock to me, because I had this pain before after one of the Moderna shots for COVID. And so I'm suspicious if I actually had a blood clot then as well. It's the same kind of pain in my left calf. And upon further investigation, I went next day for ultrasound. Those were excruciating trips to the hospital, both getting around, and thankfully I managed to find a wheelchair because by this point I couldn't put weight on both feet. I was suffering so badly in my large toe, my whole foot. It was just so swollen and painful, and I was having to wear heavier socks or slippers because it was the only thing I could get my feet into. and the ultrasound confirmed I had 3 blood clots in my left leg below the knee. So I was thankful they were below the knee, but as anyone who's had a blood clot knows, that there's always a danger it could move up into the lungs or into the brain. And so they're trying to put you on blood thinners to prevent any further blood clots. And so immediately they gave me a needle with blood thinner into my abdomen, and that stung like a bee sting basically for quite a while. And then the next day, of course, I had to go and get the ultrasound, and they confirmed, yeah, that there was 3 clots in particular. Those were really challenging diagnoses to get for me. I knew that gout was a very manageable disease, but I had gone through so much pain already for that full week and really not found any relief at all. Then the medications it gave me, I started having reactions to them. My stomach just was turning in knots. I just had really fluid stools, and I was just not feeling well at all from the medications. They didn't seem to help the swelling go down or the pain go away. And so it was challenging at that time. My family, my parents and my brother and his family came for a visit, and I was on the couch or in bed most of the time, going between crutches and wheelchair. I only managed one outing. We went to a salmon hatchery, and it was really humbling to have my 83-year-old dad to push me in a wheelchair, and it was just very surreal. And it just gave me an appreciation for what people in wheelchairs have to go through. But even with that, it just showed me how difficult it is to get around still. How oftentimes, even at emergency places or whatever, there's no spot you can drop off very easily and, you know, maneuver a wheelchair around. I also found there was a lot of places where there just wasn't access for wheelchairs. Even my church doesn't have a ramp, for example. So I wasn't able to go to church for 1 week while I was in a wheelchair. I also found that the one outing we did have, there was one sign that posted this very steep incline, and I thought I was going to fall over and break my wrist trying to break my fall, because it was so steep and then curved as well. I was like, wow, this should not be allowed to have a wheelchair ramp this steep and this crazy. So anyway, it opened my eyes a lot, and it was just a lot to deal with when you have blood clots and pain in your left leg, as well as this gout in both feet. I started on the medication for blood thinners, and of course the doctors told me you have to be very careful you don't injure yourself or cut yourself, because the bleeding will not be able to stop. And so I was just very careful what I was doing. I was very limited. I couldn't go out much. I stayed in bed or on the couch, or just kind of doing the basics of getting up and whatnot. And eventually started to find I could make my way around the house with crutches or just walking carefully. Stairs were the hardest and took the longest to maneuver. And eventually, even after my feet weren't hurting anymore, it was still awkward to walk downstairs. I had to go down kind of sideways. It just felt very uncertain, and my muscle memory was kind of gone from being on crutches and wheelchair for so long, or in bed, and not having that muscle memory, and just that insecurity of the pain as well. So what I did was, I wasn't really happy with all the meds that I was getting, so I tried some alternatives. I tried Chinese medicine and the herbs to make tea and drank it. Didn't find any relief from that. Unfortunately, I spent a lot of money on natural remedies. I would say that I had some success with that. And not only that, but I went on a pretty strict diet with no pork, no beef, no sugar, especially fructose. And so I went completely off that. And in several weeks, I ended up losing 20 pounds, which is actually healthier for me. And I've been on that diet for the most part, with some sugar replacement, maybe to add some flavor back. I've mostly fed off chicken and fish for my meats, and a lot of nuts and sources of nuts, and just learned to kind of maneuver my habits of eating away from carbs and sugar. But eventually, I tried to go as long as I could on the natural means, hoping that it would kind of rectify, and it didn't. And that's when my doctor, throughout the times I would meet with him, did introduce allopurinol as an option. And so I decided that, having tried for 3 months and not having success on just diet and then natural means and even Chinese medicine, and I had a friend come over and kind of do some training with me on getting rid of the toxins in the body and stuff, and none of that seemed to help. So I took my first allopurinol, and it was quite crazy how quickly my body picked up the allopurinol. Thankfully had no side effects that were pronounced anyway. Didn't have any gut issues, not really any head issues, and so very thankful that it started to work away at the swelling as well as the pain. And maybe before then I was having like significant pain come on, and had onset every week, but after taking allopurinol, there was just a few times where I had minor pain but not major pain, so that I could more and more not use crutches. And when I would get into a crash state, I would have to use crutches again for a couple of days, but it just kind of went less and less. And then eventually, after a couple months of being on allopurinol, I told my doctor I still have some pain and would like to see if I could increase the dose, because it was such a miracle drug for me in terms of the pain I was going through with gout for so long, and not being able to see any benefit or kind of recovery that was sustained. And so now I'm on a double dose of allopurinol from what I started, and I'm doing much better. I do get the odd kind of searing pain through my foot, sometimes over the top, sometimes on the toe. So I do still have some pain, but it hasn't, impacted my ability to walk around. As I recovered as well, I did notice that my feet were okay during the day, but as the day wore on, they got more and more tired. So I'd start having to take more rests for my feet in the afternoons. And at the beginning, the evenings were a total write-off. I just had to lie down in bed or on a couch and not able to kind of be mobile. But more and more, I was able to gain mobility again and be out, and actually into the evenings and later into the evenings. Now it isn't as much of an issue. I sometimes still get a throbbing feeling, like I said, some pain surges and stuff, but it's not sustained pain. And so it doesn't affect my mobility quite as much. And so I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, it's such a challenge when you have compounding issues. That's what I find a lot of my friends I talk to. It's not just the chronic fatigue or the fibromyalgia, it's all the other things that are kind of piling up and can indicate that there's even more that's kind of dysfunctioning within the body. And so it's learning to kind of pivot and to make adjustments to accept the new lows and the new pain and the new kind of energy challenges and thresholds that I have to shift around. So I'm thankful to be kind of back to my previous before gout and before blood clots, but it's made me very leery now about getting any further vaccinations because of that blood clot problem that I think I might have had one before as well, but it was not enough for the doctor to check out at the time. I didn't have enough swelling, perhaps, or discoloration, but this time it seemed to have taken gout and maybe a little bit of an injury on my toe to kind of unpack it and discover all these nuances that are going wrong in my body. And so it's been a journey to change my eating habits, to take hold of pacing better, really seeing that there's an impact also in terms of my physical body and my mental well-being. It's definitely a struggle when you're in bed a lot and can't do much with your body. I don't think I appreciated work as much as when I was in bed most of the time, where it feels like you're just doing everything that you can do with your mind. So listening to good things, reading good things, and really trying to kind of keep yourself mentally sane and growing. But I really missed that ability to work. And so as I started to get better, I started to be able to do little jobs, whether it's laundry or vacuuming or working on the yard and such. And so I'm very thankful for the gift of work. And currently I'm actually reading Tim Keller's Every Good Endeavor, and it's really given me a sense of the beauty of the work that God has given us, even before the fall, and how we can work with Him to make the world a better place and to do a good job, to serve others, and to give glory to Him. So growing in that journey, but thankful for recovery, for allopurinol, for doctors and oversight and care, both at the ER, at the basically the emergency centers that I went to, but also St. Paul's Hospital, where the specialists in blood clots were able to meet with me and further give me clearance that the blood clots had cleared after 3 months of blood thinners. And so that ultrasound there, it was just definitely very assuring to have them say it's not as bad as the ER thought it was. I got quite a scare when the doctor said, we need to get you to St. Paul's right away that day, and they're trying to get me in. Apparently they misread how big the clot was, and so it seemed very scary, and to have my family in town at the same time and wanting to take them out and do tours and stuff, or just to hang out, it was hard to be in the hospitals and to be checked out by doctors and everything. But it was sure full assurance to have these professionals overseeing and giving me wisdom and counsel. And so yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope that if you have chronic issues with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or other ones, but then they're compounding with now gout and ongoing management of that, as well as blood clots, yeah, you get it, you understand. And so yeah, I hope you're not alone today. And in the midst of all this pain and swelling and suffering, I think I did closer to God. It seems like in those times of suffering, you have nothing else to do but go closer to God and to rely on Him, when even the medical world or health and all that cannot even fix the issues you have. You realize just how temporal and how weak our body is, and it just grows my spirit to rely on Him and trust Him, and to know that He Himself entered our suffering, that He was one who was made in every way like we are, and yet did not sin. I'm thankful too for the purification that time does bring to the soul. It's like a turning away from sin and a turning away from these comforts that I often look to in life, and put my comfort in Jesus alone. So yeah, I hope this encourages you today, if you're walking through chronic illness, to turn in those times of darkness and challenge to Jesus and the hope that He promises of resurrection hope, of the body that will be redeemed, of a world and a universe that will be redeemed, and our souls and our spirits, our minds, our bodies, everything. So that's the hope that we have, even though there's, I'm thankful for the little bit of recovery and change in this world that I can experience, but looking forward to that ultimate experience of being with Him in glory. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.